you do. So come on in. We'll give everybody a few minutes to come on in. I'm so excited. Y'all remembered you set your countdown clocks. Yay. And we're going to have a really good discussion today about decolonizing mental health and specifically the Blacker the Brain campaign, conversations, and cohort. And I'm going to go into more detail about what each of those things mean. So let me give it like one more minute and then we will like jump into the grind of it. Not the grind of it. You know I don't grind. Yeah, I know I don't grind. Look at what I'm doing. I'm out with the trees. I don't grind. But we'll jump into the thick of it so that we can have a really good conversation. It's just me. So I'm going to get to your questions as the best I can. If I miss them, if I miss your questions, feel free to, you can try to DM me. You just got to be patient with me getting back to you. Or you can also go to theblackofthebrain@gmail.com and email any questions that I might miss. So we're going to have a really, really great conversation. I'm really looking forward to it, and we'll just kind of go along. So we'll jump in now because we're already kind of gathering folks, and as folks come in, we'll answer the questions. So the big question of the purpose of this is, what is the Blacker the Brain? And so the Blacker the Brain, if you've been following me for a while, if you know a little bit about my background, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also an artist and a writer, podcaster. I run the Shaping the Shift podcast. I'm also a co-host on Den Black Mama's podcast. You may know me from working with Ebony Janice on the Free Joy Experience, which is our anti-racism work. And so the Blacker the Brain has been a part of my language in all these ways. You may know me from Decolonizing Joy and Pleasure. It's been a part of the big vision for a very long time. And I'll throw out little teasers here and there about, how can we start a grad program? How can we do this? And I just kind of throw out little teasers every now and then because what I've been leading up to is the Blacker the Brain. So the Blacker the Brain is a campaign, conversation, and cohort. And so today, what I really want to go into details about is breaking down what those pieces are and why we're even doing this. One of the big questions I get is who can access the Blacker the Brain? And the answer is anyone. One of the reasons I'm so particular about decolonizing mental health is because it intersects with everything else. Mental health intersects with housing issues. Mental health intersects with those of you who are in education, those of you who work in healthcare, those of you who are nurses and doctors, social workers. So it really impacts everything. And it's kind of this hub that has all these different spokes, which is why, yes, a lot of some of the language and some of the particulars and some of the initial efforts will be to target the APA, to target these larger organizations who are quote unquote in charge of mental health, to disrupt the history of mental health and to expose it in a lot of ways. And when I say mental health, I'm specifically talking about the history of psychology and psychotherapy in Western culture, in what we experience in these United States. So mental health, when we think of it broadly, has been a global part of our indigenous, native, ancestral practices since the beginning of time. But there was no point in labeling something that was integrated into our lifestyle, right? The only reason it needed to be tethered out is because of contact with Western energy, with the West, right? Contact with this very colonizing, at times violent, and very separatist type energy, right? Where everything has to be categorized and put in a separate space. So the form of psychotherapy and psychology, the form of medicine, the form of education that we are all forced to experience, that we are all forced to go through, is required for maintenance of the West, required for maintenance of Western values, required for maintenance of Western systems, right? And so what we're saying is we never agreed, we never consented to Western values, to Western ideals, and to being forced integrated into Western culture. And so this form of psychotherapy, psychology, medicine, education does not fit our cultural values and needs, and therefore needs to be either dismantled or expanded to include what is valuable to us inherently, cellularly, spiritually, psychically, and all the above, right? And so the Blacker the Brain campaign, conversations, and cohort is really here to disrupt these systems through mental health and through the idea that we did not need this form of treatment until we came into contact with Western society. Therefore, what would actually heal us is not something that exists within Western culture. It is something that exists in our cultures of origin that need to have space to be reclaimed and reintegrated into our current practices without the gatekeeping of white mental health, right? So we've all seen a million mindfulness campaigns, a million mindfulness slogans, as though Black and brown and all these other ethnic groups did not have ancestors who literally meditated and damn near perfected the science of meditation. But if you are a person of color and you want to teach that from your own ancestry, you have to go through how many white organizations to do it? How much do you have to pay? How many gatekeepers do you have to okay it? How much of their data do you have to use to justify it? Our data is our grandmothers. We don't need data outside of our grandmothers to do this work. We are ancestrally entitled to do this work, right? But the problem comes into the gatekeeping. So who knows how to get through the gates? Who has access to the gates? White people, right? And so when we see the face then of our native practices being resold back to us, it's being sold through a white lens. And therefore the pieces of it, the ashe, the spiritual power, the rooting of the ancestors it came from has been washed out, right? So now we are in a session with a person of color, talking to them about mindfulness without ashe, without spiritual rooting, without power, without earth power, right? And if they don't respond to that favorably, we have been given permission through our grad programs, permission through these governing bodies of our industries, of our fields, to label them as resistant. And then we walk around saying, well, Black and brown people don't go to therapy, you know. So I have huge problems with this, and I always have. And I'm pretty convinced at this point that the whole reason I even became a therapist was to disrupt this shit completely. So that I would understand what it was like to go through a grad program, understand what it was like to go through, you know, the starting of a practice and taking the exams and blah, 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 reading the books and going to the conferences that we have to pay for. Yes, the life will be saved, I promise. But like we're forced to go to the conferences, we're forced to go to the trainings to learn more Western ways of healing that do not apply to our value system or our cultures or our body. So the Blacker the Brain, in a nutshell, is here to disrupt that. And our hope is that by tackling mental health, we support and empower the educational system. We support and empower the health care system. We support and empower the foster care system, and all these other systems that actually at their core are disrupting the mental health of people of color, right? And so I'm so glad so many of you responded and part of the reason I put the video up yesterday about the APA was because I need you to know what we're getting into, right? We're going to be cute while we do it and we're going to be joy centered, but we also are here to fuck some shit up, right? Like I don't feel comfortable as a practitioner with the fact that I have trouble referring people out because I don't know if my client is going to get decolonized therapy. I don't know, even if they go to a person of color, because that person of color had to go through a grad program that basically told them who they were and their instincts about working with their community and their families was off. A licensing exam that made them want to cover their own ass before they would advocate for a client. I don't know that person of color has not had to internalize white supremacy in their training so that they now will be giving this other person of color the same type of responses that a white practitioner who went through this system did, right? And so this is what we're here to do. And this is a huge thing, right? It's huge. And I understand that it's huge. And that is why it's open to all, because we are not all going to be able to be everywhere. And we cannot have 5 people out there doing decolonized therapy. We need If there's a ton of white identified therapists out there, they need to know how to decolonize their practice for sure, because they will be working with white clients who need to be informed through a decolonized practice, and other clients. And we need as many people as possible to understand that decolonizing mental health is key to undoing systemic racism, and that the way these systems are set up right now, these helping professions are set up to look like they're helping, and they're actually very much the more implicit part of upholding a white supremacist system, right? So I don't know if any of you have listened to, and if someone wouldn't mind typing it into the chat, Nice White Parents. It's a podcast that Crystal Irby recommended, and I'm completely obsessed with it at this point. I think there's only 5 or 6 episodes, and this conversation that this New York Times writer has is like really looking at the unrecognized insidiousness of the impact of well-intentioned white people on school systems, right? And this can be said for mental health, this can be said for healthcare, and all these different forms. And so thinking, as I'm listening to this podcast, and she's talking about the impact on education and academics, and then we know that determines economic status and all these other things that come into play because of the way the system is set up. I'm thinking the one thing she's not talking about is their mental health. So what is the mental health of these Black and brown, of these Puerto Rican and Black students they talk about in New York, who are going through school systems and being tossed around like a ping pong ball based on what white parents want or don't want? Even though their Black and brown parents are advocating, sending letters that represent thousands of voices, it only took 30-something white voices to wash those voices out over and over again, right? And thinking about how schools are situated where they're situated in order to separate people of color from their communities. So therefore, if you want your kid to go to a good school because that school has resources, your kid has to go to school near a white neighborhood, which makes them feel further away from their community, but also means all the resources look like they're always going to be around white people, right? Now, even though that is an accurate reflection of the society because the resources are where the white people are, that doesn't mean that that's a reason to dismantle it. That's not a reason to uphold it, right? And so the threat that we find in these spaces isn't as explicit as we like to believe, right? I have been told by white mental health practitioners that I don't see color and, I just treat people as human. I asked one point blank, and some people may be on here who are witnesses to this. I asked one point blank, you don't think that working on a campus that's 90% people of color means that you should be well versed in the needs and the desires and the histories of those people of color? And she said, I think that's optional. Because what mental health really teaches people is when you go through these grad programs, and Lorena mentioned education, this is again another intersection. It's not just, the counselors that are in the schools or whatever. It's the actual fucking grad programs that we have to go through to get the training, right? So they're taught that one diversity class that they took in their grad program. And let's be clear, the last time I checked, as a psychologist, you are not required, or at MFT, you are not required to do any additional CEUs in diversity after you graduate. After that one class you had to check off, right? So you learned everything you need to know about everybody else that's not like you in one class, okay? For the rest of your life. Social workers, it's 1 hour. So how do you center the needs? How do you develop theory and praxis around a people that you don't even have to consider in order to maintain your license? You do not have to consider people of color to maintain your license. You do not have to. If we're talking about mental health and education and grad programs, let's talk about the stress that these grad students of color are under in these programs. These programs that are meant to help them shape the world, right? Teachers, nursing, therapists, right? Social workers. And here they are feeling like they have to get smaller and smaller and smaller to even get through the program. I can go on about this literally all day, so I'm going to pause so we can talk about the Black Earther Brain. The first thing you can do is follow the Black Earther Brain and encourage anybody you know who are in the helping professions to follow the Black Earther Brain. Our IG isn't popping yet, but it's going to be, and you want to be there when it starts popping. So that's one. Two, the Black Earther Brain campaign for people who recognize that Black mental health matters, and we use Black because Blackness in this country is the vanguard for civil rights, right? Anti-Blackness is the economic model that is best suited for this form of capitalism that we are experiencing in the United States. So when we target things that are impacting Black bodies, we have seen the effect is that there is a precedence for all these other marginalized bodies to also be able to say, this is what we need, this is what we need. And also that when we target what Black bodies need, it is inherently inclusive of the needs of these other groups, because civil rights wasn't just for Black people, right? Voting rights was not just for Black people, right? So none of the rights that have been obtained by Black people in this country have only pertained to Black people. They've actually been lobbied for and were written by the direction of those Black people to include everyone so that no one would have any discrimination. And that really only happens when we talk about Blackness. What often happens if I say POC is that Black people are erased and other people of color who are closer to Caucasian are favored in place of actually prioritizing Blackness. And that's not anything about the people of color. That is how whiteness works, right? It's going to favor the thing that seems closest to itself. So when I talk about the Black Earther Brain and why we go all the way there with making it the Black brain is that we know that inherently by me saying that my queer brothers and sisters, our brown brothers and sisters, our families, all bodies in between will also have this baseline from which they can elevate and grab all these rights and advocate and pull from, right? And so I give that disclaimer so we know that the work that we're doing here is for everyone. And I need everyone to tune into it so that we can all recognize where we're standing and what we're standing on and how it exists in relationship to anti-Blackness. But also there are people who will be here who are like, yes, we see that this matters and this is important, but this also feels out of our wheelhouse. That's fine. If you just want to support what we're trying to do, it's super easy. In my bio, there's a link, and you can go to Patreon and just join the Brain campaign. The campaign is just a $9 a month. I love you. We love what you're doing. We want to support it, but it's out of our wheelhouse. Perfect. Let's say you're in like biotech and you're like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Great. $9 a month. We appreciate you because that goes to bringing in some instructors and bringing in other experienced people. That goes into developing more resources for the cohort that we're going to be talking about, and so on. So at a basic level, if you just want to be helpful, you can just join the campaign for $9 a month, point blank period, and anybody can do that. 2, conversations. Every 4 to 6 weeks, we will be doing a lecture. This will be an ongoing lecture series. I don't see an end in sight, but it'll be every 4 to 6 weeks so that there's time in between to digest and implement what we're talking about, but also so that we can grab new people to come in and from different fields and participate. So the lectures are about 90-minute lectures with a 30-minute Q&A. They're really going to be pretty interactive. I'm not a big PowerPoint person. Like we're actually having relationship and doing work and talking. And so the first one will be the Black Earther Brain, basically like a intro to decolonizing mental health. What do we mean by it? What is the history? What are we talking about? And so that one will be on October 13th. There'll be, don't worry, there'll be a post about it and it'll be a link in my bio by Tuesday. So that is conversations. And you can say, I don't know if I'm ready to join the cohort, but I do want to do more than just throw $9 a month in the pot. So maybe I can just attend the lectures, and you can do that at your pace ongoingly. The lectures, the difference with the lectures though is they'll be up and then there'll be a replay available for a week afterwards. And after that, they go into what we're calling the Black Earther Brain cohort. So the cohort has definitely more legs to it. The cohort is where I'm really trying to establish and create a collective. And this collective of multifaceted practitioners will be dedicated to the Blacker the Brain agenda, which is to decolonize mental health and use it to create these spokes in these other fields of education, of healthcare, of housing, of the foster care system, right? And so our goal as a collective will be, one, to take care of ourselves and to take care of each other. I will be meeting with the cohort monthly as check-ins, and we'll be talking about different clients, and we'll be talking about different situation scenarios as this world continues to turn and progress. They will also always have access to the lectures. So that one is the joining the cohort means you automatically have access to the lectures, but it also means you also have access to other resources. So when I bring in people to speak to us, that will be something for the cohort. The cohort will also have just a little bit, they will have more access basically. And they will be committing, to the deeper work. My goal with the cohort is that over a period of time, I would love to be able to have my cohort members have a logo that's on their materials, that's on their website, that says, I am a member of the Blacker the Brain community. Those won't be given out publicly. Those will be for cohort members exclusively, because we want to create a directory of practitioners who are doing the work actively and participating in the Blacker the Brain actively, so we know who we can feel safe as practitioners referring people to. I don't know how many of you have been in this place where I have felt I've kept clients probably longer than I should have because I didn't know where to send them. I didn't know if the next person would be versed in Afro spirituality. I didn't know if the next person would be versed in social justice. I didn't know if the next person knew anything about anti-Blackness or racism. And I didn't want to assume, because they were a person of color, that they did. And so I have this fear. And I get requests all the time for individual therapy. And I hate that I can't do it, because I feel strongly right now that what I need to be doing is this macro work, right? And so a big part of that is to build community together where we can inter-refer, where we can have kind of like, if you've heard about the historic Green Book, the Green Book is this travel guide for Black people, not even through the South, but through the North, which everybody thinks was so liberal. And again, this is another fallacy of American history. The North was just as bad. It was just as bad. It was Jim Crow on crack, right? So the myth is that the North was this and the myth still is that these spaces, California and New York, that they're so liberal. This is where the damage is happening in real time, in these insidious ways, in these very liberal assumed places, right? So it's also really important for me to get white practitioners in here who think they're the good ones, so that we can talk about what does that even mean, and we can listen to the Nice White Parents podcast and sort of dissect that some more. But the cohort, our bigger agenda is to create this directory so that our people in our community know it's safe to go to this person. Even if this person makes a mistake, they are supported by a community of people who are going to hold them accountable, who they can go back to, who they can know how to do the repair work with, and so on and so forth. And so that feels a lot safer for me than just randomly picking out of a hat, right? Which is a lot of what I feel has been happening. The work that we'll be doing initially, because this is a huge agenda, is to heal and feed ourselves, right? To recognize as people in the service. So how you join the cohort, thank you, is you go, there's a link in my bio. So it's also similar, there's Patreon tiers. The tier that you would choose is the one that says the Blacker the Brain cohort. And there's a link in the bio. So the first thing I recognize that we'd have to do, and my responsibility with this cohort, is heal. We have been working as service providers in an industry that does not value us, that does not value our values, that has harmed us, and that has actually taught us to cause harm, with good intentions, right? And so there's some healing to be done for that. There's some shame that has to be removed. There's some guilt that has to be removed. And so a lot of the work with the cohort, when we meet one-on-one, will initially be around that. Like, let's heal that first before we start turning our focus to the client, right? And then as we proceed, of course, we want to go into healing those that we serve, right? We want to be able to come from a healed space to be able to work and heal those that we offer services to, and to expand on our definition of what those services mean, and to feel more equipped and empowered to explore things that are from our ancestors, things that are inherently in us, maybe not even just ancestrally, just in our own self, right? And then the bigger picture of all of this is to shift systems, right? I fully envision and I fully believe in a time when we are directly at constructing the rebuilding of what it looks like for mental health services in this country and abroad. I really see it. I really see us saying, look, we can, this is not working, never has been. I see a shifting system. I see this being so effective that that system has to yield to what we're building and what we've created. That's how I roll. I'm a fire sign, I'm a Leo, and I think really, really big. But think about what that would do if what we're saying is mental health is like the spokes. It goes into the home, it goes into the school, it goes into the job, the workplace. Mental health is like this center that keeps everything connected. If we can shift that, then that ultimately means we shift culture. That ultimately means that we get to have a say in the values of this country and abroad. And ultimately, that is our goal, right? Our goal is, because what do we know about mental health? If our values were different as a society, we wouldn't have as many clients. These are the facts, right? Our goal is to put ourselves out of a job so that we could do other shit that we want to do, like paint or write books or play in the ocean, right? But such a large percentage, 90% of what our clients are coming in with is shit that was created by Western society. And so if we can shift the culture and shift the system, then we get to decide too as practitioners that now we can evolve into the next level of what we want to be to help this world, right? Some of us want to be botanists. Some of us want to garden. There's a lot of things that we hold this space of healing for a society that is constantly violent because we know no one else will, right? And so these visions are really big, and I know that, but I want you to know where my mind is, where my spirit is, so that you can see the full vision and the full ride. I intentionally am not putting this through a CEU process. I intentionally am not putting this through a white gatekeeping process. Every bit of what we do, from time to how we talk to each other to what we call ourselves, will be decolonized. Any work you do with me will always, I'm constantly trying to say what is the way that feels most accurate to define this thing without me thinking about the constructs that, white supremacy and Western culture has put into my brain. So with that being said, this work is elemental. And what do I mean by elemental? I mean the actual elements. This work is fire, air, water, and earth. And for those of you who end up being in the cohort, I'm going to share with you my elemental cycle of healing that Oya has gifted me with, that I am constantly practicing. But we'll share more about that and other decolonized practices in more detail. So it is elemental. It is elemental. Like even when we're discussing it and we're creating things, we're going to be asking ourselves, ooh, does this need fire? Ooh, does this need water? Does this need air? Does this need earth? And we're going to be on some alchemy, right? That's how we're going to be creating this. It's also eco-womanist. And thank you so much to Ebony Janice, who constantly reminds me, that's who you are. That's what you are. You're an eco-womanist. And if this is your first time hearing the term, one of my first times hearing the term was in the book Sister Vegan. I was reading it, and the second essay was by Layli, and I'm failing on the last name because I think it changed. But, and this is a paraphrase, she described eco-womanism as a practice that recognizes the human beings, the living world, the non-living environment, and the spirit world in relationship as one super ecosystem, and recognizes that human beings have caused harm to that one super being, and that the way to repair that harm is to re-spiritualize practices, right? To reintegrate spirit into practice. When we talk to our elders, our indigenous elders, and when I say indigenous, I want to be very clear. I am not exclusively talking about Native populations to the Americas. Sometimes I think we exclude African indigenous folks or indigenous folks in Asia. So I really want to make sure that we understand I'm talking about a global concept of our indigenous ancestors. And so when we think about what their practices were, it wasn't that these things were separated, it's that they were integrated. So when I cook, it's spiritual. When I talk to my friends, it's spiritual. When I dance with my family, it's spiritual. When I clean my house, it's spiritual. Like, it's the re-spiritualization, the re-ritualizing of things. And so another book that we'll use quite frequently in our work will be The Healing Wisdom of Africa by Maladoma. And if you want to know more about his background, he has another book of Water and Spirit that actually talks more about his culture and his name and beautiful details like that. And so I say that because this is a model that says there is this super organism that spirit and non-living environment and living environment and human beings share and coexist in. And a lot of things we're talking about will be in coexistence. They will not be this or that. They will be this and that. And we will have to challenge ourselves. Let me tell y'all, this is work, because we also want to make enemies of things sometimes. We grew up in a culture that separates and makes enemies that are good and are bad and assigns a judgment. And through this work, we're going to have to really challenge ourselves on that, right? And we're going to have to look at righteous anger versus like just how much of that is colonized energy that we've taken in that says them versus us and these types of things, right? So there'll be some tantra work involved in this. There'll be a lot of beautiful things, but I wanted to be clear about that. It will be spirit led, so I know I go through rituals before I even approach you all to talk to you, because it's a huge responsibility. And I always want to make sure that I'm aligned with my ancestors in spirit to have these conversations. But similarly, you will be doing that same thing. Like when you're working with your clients, you will be having to trust a part of you that you can't touch or see. And that part of you that has been very much invalidated through this culture, right? That part of you that you've been taught not to trust, that divine feminine, that feminine in the masculine, that spanda, that waya energy, that transformational energy that you've been taught to fear, that wildness, that first gut instinct, right? We will be working on rebuilding that so that we can rebuild it in our clients as well. Because I really don't like the term diversity, because in an eco womanist model, diversity would mean every single individual would have full permission to be different. I can pick up two roses and they're not identical, and they're not expected to be. Nothing in nature is expected to be identical. But why is it as human beings we expect this homogenous way of being? And that's a big part of what we're going to have to work to dismantle as well. So it will be spirit led. It will be ancestor supported. It will be joy and pleasure centered, because I have found no greater weapon than joy. I just haven't. And I tried a lot of things. And I've done a lot of fighting. And I have found no greater weapon than joy. And I have found that nothing pisses off white supremacy more than my joy. That's just what that is. So we will all constantly be asking ourselves, and I want you to hold me to task. If you're like, I'm struggling to find joy in this process, I'm struggling to find joy in this cohort, I'm struggling to find joy in this, then we need to talk about it as a cohort. We need to talk about if we're automatically thinking of a mechanism that is one that we learned versus one that we're feeling called to create, right? So it will also be very powerful. And I know our agenda is huge and it sounds super amazing, and it is. And we'll do it in pieces. And what we have to remind ourselves is we're on spirit's time. So everything that's happening is happening in divine time and order. And it may feel like we got to do this and we got to do that. We got to respond to this. No, we feed ourselves. We heal ourselves. We help feed and heal those we serve. We shift systems, and then we shift culture. That is our agenda. That is how we're going to do it, piece by piece by piece. It has to feel joyful. It has to feel exciting. We have to be clear. So I will always work at being very clear, very, very clear, and clearing up any confusion I can. It also has to be challenging. And so I invite you to greet your challenges and blessings through this work equally. Don't look at, I call them your stings and tickles, right? Everybody likes the tickles, nobody likes the stings, but you have to love them both because they're both here to bring us information. And that information is valuable. And as soon as we put a judgment on it, we dismiss it and we stop taking in the information, right? And so I really, really want us to work on just staying in this place of like, oh, that's interesting. I felt a sting right there. Oh, that's interesting. I felt a tickle right there. And not assigning a judgment to either, but just allowing them to exist. Are there any questions for me? Because I've been rambling for 36 minutes. So if you have questions for me, again, for those of you who might have missed at the beginning, who is this for? Everybody. Because mental health affects everything, right? It's for everybody. I see my friend Akila, Fair the Free Child on here. Our work overlaps so much. This is one of my favorite people in the world to talk to. I'm constantly learning about, I'm sure she knows about the Nice White Parents podcast. I cannot stop thinking about her in that podcast. But I mean, when I'm listening to the Nice White Parents podcast, because I think of everything she talks about on Fair the Free Child. And so I just want to also highlight her work because she don't know yet. She about to find out on this live that I'm going to be pulling her in to talk to my cohort for show. Because I want to make sure that our educators are aware of her work and empowered by her work and the work of many others. But that we're also having this cross conversation about mental health being decolonized while we're decolonizing education and schoolishness, as my friend Akila would say. So let me just, it's for anybody and everybody because it's going to take us all to make it happen. You can do the campaign where you're like, I love this, but it's not my wheelhouse. So you just donate $9 a month to the Blacker the Brain campaign through the Patreon link, which is in my bio. You can join the Blacker the Brain IG so that you can follow and keep up with what we're doing. You can join the lecture series, which will be the conversations that'll be happening every 4 to 6 weeks until Spirit says stop. So for the foreseeable future. And you can join the cohort where we about to go to work. I'm so excited. The goal is to be able to create just one of the goals. One of the goals is the directory, right? Let's have this directory of decolonized practitioners, people in education, people in the medical industry, people in mental health, who we can refer people to, right, safely and feel comfortable about that. Let's get that going. And then also, let's then use the power of our cohort to begin to dismantle and deconstruct things like the APA and other gatekeepers in the profession that have hijacked and colonized our ancestral practices and tried to resell them back to us for a minimum of $1,000. Don't get me started. I get so pissed. I get so upset. Who has questions? Who's excited? And who just wants to? If you are, we try to create something economically where it could be at different levels. But if you're like, yeah, I don't even have $2, don't. Just follow the IG. Just keep up with the IG. Just tag people you think will do this work. That is super helpful. There's no bad way to support this, really. So tag a bunch of people. tag a bunch of people to be a part of the cohort. You go into the link on my bio. It'll say the Blacker the Brain, and it'll lead you to my Patreon. There's choices there. The choice you want to make is the Blacker the Brain cohort. And I'll be putting there'll be a welcome video in there this weekend. I'm working on that. And you'll be getting information about the first lecture, which again, the cohorts, your lectures are included. So your lectures are included, and then we do our check-in once a month, which I'm really excited about. Oh yeah, I would love to connect with her. Let's connect. We might as well not reinvent the wheel. We can join forces. I will be happy to do that, Akila. Thank you so much. So anything else you need from me, any other information, this is pretty much what I'll be talking about nonstop. The Free Joy Experience, if there's those of you on here who've been doing the Free Joy Experience or watching it with me and Ebony Janice, we have been so busy that we have not even said that we have a Free Joy resource library now. So our lectures and things like that will now be housed in the Free Joy resource library. So it's available to anybody who needs to use it as a resource through our Patreon. And so that's there. I'll probably be talking about that next week because I failed to talk about it this week. Dr. Lexington, you're going to love that work with Maladoma Somé. It's of Water and Spirit was a really, really beautiful work. And then I think the Healing Wisdom of Africa gives us more direct practices to implement. So if you want to start with the work that's more about, for any of you wanting to think about ancestors or just connection, even to elders of water and spirit, such a beautiful work, and the application of ritual, and it's just beautiful. And then go into the Healing Wisdom of Africa would be amazing. I'm going to have so many resources for this cohort. Whenever I cross something, I'm going to want to throw it your way. So you don't have to, feel free to take what you choose. You don't have to take it all. This is not gender specific. When I say we need everybody, we need everybody. So it's not gender specific at all, because we definitely, we need people who have intersecting identities in the space to also hold us accountable, not just on the issue of race, but on the issue of gender, the issue of the sexuality spectrum, the issue of different abilities. It's really hard for all of us to get it all right. But the more of us in the space that represent these different spaces, the more truly diverse we actually are, the more we just create an environment where people are allowed to be who the fuck they are, and we value them at that, the more we're sure that we will get the work out of this that we really want, which is to, remember, heal and feed ourselves, then heal and feed those we serve, then shift systems, which will shift cultures. So let's see, am I missing something? Amazing. Okay. If you have, let me repeat the, will there be a space to discuss the individuals who support? Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Thank you. Is it Curly G? So that's with the cohort. That's what I'm partly thinking. The cohort will probably be a 2-hour session. One part of it, I'm thinking to do some consultation. People doing different forms of healing. Yes, please. Yes. Absolutely. Brandy, Nicole, 88. Yes, please. Yes. Reiki practitioners, acupuncturists, like all of it. Like all of it. Like it's going to take all of it. And hearing those voices will help us to create, so when I say decolonize therapy, I don't view that as a static thing. I view that as an ever evolving thing, right? Who can tell a thing that it's done evolving? I can't. So I know as of this moment, what I mean when I say decolonize therapy, I know what that feels and looks like. I know that the more I have a cohort of people who are from so many varied backgrounds and ideas, that definition will just expand. And that's what we want. So going back to what was asked, yeah, I imagine the cohort to be part consultation. Like, hey, I ran into this situation, not personal life sort of consultation. Like, I have this black friend. Like, that's more free joy experience work. But if you're like, I have this client that I'm working with and I can feel myself feeling limited and that makes me feel insecure. And then this is how it's showing up in sessions and stuff like that. That would be awesome, right? Or if you're like, I'm uncomfortable bringing up certain topics. And what if my client doesn't want to talk about race and they are black? Great, let's talk about that. So I do envision part of it being that, but I also want part of it to be like direct healing, direct feeding for you as well. So there may be some times when it's a little bit more case consulty. There may be more times when we're coming off of a lecture and maybe we're debriefing things from that lecture series that we just came into, or maybe I bring in a guest and you guys are like, oh, that was amazing, let me take notes or whatever. Also know that if you're in the cohort, everything's recorded for you. So if you can't make it, like, don't stress. Like, we're going to put the recording link in there for you and you'll get all the Zooms and everything. It's like really, we really want to be inclusive of that. Another big thing when we say systems, I'm coming for grad programs. There'll be a post about that next week. I'm coming for these grad programs for sure. So please tag grad students because they need a lot of support as they're going through these programs. I had so many clients experiencing anxiety, imposter syndrome, through the grad program itself, right? And these are supposed to be the good people, right? This is what I'm trying to tell y'all. That's why you got to listen to Nice White Parents, which Crystal Irby, she's on here. I just said, put me on this podcast. I'm on episode 4. I can't stop because it's, in a lot of these spaces, it's the insidiousness of it. It's the perceived innocence of it. Do you recommend people who think it's open? I'm big on, like, again, joy being centered, right? So I wouldn't invite people who won't find joy in this. Now, what it could be is, as we've built it and as it grows, there may be resources that we birth as a cohort, as a collective, that we then take those resources and begin to share with the world, right? So maybe we come up with the ebook of strategies that we've come up with, right? Here's how to decolonize your practice, whatever. And we want to share it in an ebook. Like, that may be something we share with the world. But I do want to make sure the people coming into this space are joyfully excited about it. So I wouldn't recommend like dragging folks into it who don't want to be into it, because that won't serve any of us. I think if we keep it joy-centered and pleasure-centered, that will make sure that all of us that are in there creating constantly are creating at our highest levels, right? But then we'll be creating things that we can definitely share with the world at different levels of their understanding of these concepts, if that makes sense. Yeah. We have a little bit more time, so I'm trying to look at see if I missed any questions. Yes, the energy part, it does matter. Yeah, exactly. And you know, this is why I tell you, joy is my metric, right? Joy is how I measure everything. So, and it's not that displeasure doesn't teach me something too. Displeasure teaches me that I'm out of alignment. So even in the cohort, if we have moments where we experience displeasure, then it's like, okay, what do we need to do? What's happening here? Are there people here who feel less represented or or more silenced? My goal would be, and my intention to be, which I'm one person. So again, as a cohort, this is something we'd have to agree to do together, is if we see people getting quieter, just because some people tend to be more dominant and some people tend to be more vocal, let's remember that we want everybody's voice here so that we're creating this ever evolving, expanding definition of decolonized mental health, decolonized wellness. We coming for you yoga instructors too. We coming. I mean, it's gonna be some things. It's gonna be uncomfortable at some points, right? You know, we got to talk about where we get these things from. Thank you, Ebony Janice. I am cute and I am smart, and my glasses game is really elevating during this part. Yeah, for me, remember, I mean, this cohort, this is not about who can't be in it. Does that make sense? I want to make sure. Oh, I left out. My belt is cute too. Girl, you just going down the list. Okay, let me focus. Ebony Janice got me distracted now because she knows I'm a Leo and I like shiny things, even if I'm the shiny thing. There's no who can't be here, right? So let me go back over what we talked about. This space is focused on elemental. So it's nature. There's going to be some nature centering for sure. It's eco-womanist and looking at the relationships for all these things. It's spirit-led, ancestor supported, joy and pleasure centered, and powerful. So really, I can't say who that exists in and who that doesn't, right? So, and I don't know who a client is going to walk in and see. I don't know that there's not a black person in an all-white city who's going to have to go to a white therapist or a therapist of another ethnicity. So, I'm not limiting that, if that makes sense. I just want that to be clear. But the thing we are targeting is white supremacy and all its forms, because, you know, capitalism is a form of white supremacy, and homophobia is a form of white supremacy, and transphobia. So we're targeting it in all of its forms. It's anti-nature attitude, it's anti-ancestor attitude. We're targeting. We're coming for all of it. We're coming for all of it. Like Care Bears with big old joy, you know, but we're really, you know, we got some muscle behind these Care Bears. Like, we're not playing around. Like, we will cut somebody out, but with love, because we love them. And so, I mean, this is another thing I want to say. I have no problem checking any of these things, anybody associated. I have no problem checking it, because that's love to me. For me, love is not going to let you be out here acting crazy in these streets, being racist or being, I'm not going to, yeah, no, like, to me, it's not loving. I was explaining to someone yesterday on IG Live, it's like you let your friend walk around in a crazy outfit, and you knew before you left the house that outfit was trash. Why you to me, I'd be like, where's her friend? Where's their friends? Because who let them walk out like that, right? So for me, that's what I'm saying to the American Psychological Association. Your slip is showing, okay? You got toilet paper stuck to the back of your shoe. You a mess. Can we talk about this? Everybody else is going to let you walk around here looking like a mess, but I'm not going to do that because love is the root of what we do. And so love ain't going to let you walk around here being racist as fuck and not tell you. Come on now. We have to recognize love cuts both ways. It's not going to let you be less than what you should be. If you're the American Psychological Association, grow, evolve, be inclusive. I'm just demanding you be what you claim you are. I don't have a problem with that. And love is me holding you to that. You see what I'm saying? So they don't have to receive it as love, but I'm very clear that what we're doing is a love work. It's a heart work. Point blank, period. Even when I call them motherfuckers on my live, and I did. I've called them motherfuckers a couple times, but I mean that in love. I feel like this is where Ebony Janice would normally block me, but you can't block me today, boo. You can't block me today, but it is. So, is everything really clear? So let's go over just how to access. So, I really don't have the money right now to contribute anyway. Great. Join the IG, follow the IG at the Blacker the Brain, and also tag anybody you think would be relevant. Teachers, nurses, doctors, anybody you know who's been frustrated within their fields with the lack of expansion. And then the conversations. Join the lectures as you can. They'll be coming up every 4 to 6 weeks, and they're $27. That price is going to be what it is. It's $9 to join just the campaign. If you feel like this is out of my wheelhouse or I don't have the time to do this the way I want to, then $9. And thank you so much, because that will go a long way. Because one of the things I'm really proud of is, and Ebony, Janice, and I are going to talk about this eventually pretty soon. And Fair the Free Child is another person doing it. I mean, we're around a lot of Black women who are creating things that are employing, and joyfully employing other people. And we like that. And we like to be able to have people be paid for their expertise, and people to be, just be able to be secure. And so all these things allow us to reach people better with social media, build out a better website for you, and all these different things. So, that $9 is a lot to make that happen. So please don't think less of it. There's the lectures that are $27, and then there's the cohort, which is $45 a month, and that's all access, right? And so all those levels are welcome. Anybody who missed this live, please tag them in it. We have consistently, listen, let me tell y'all what I love though already, what I already know. The way y'all been up in these comments, okay? These is my folks. This is what I like. The joy, the laughing, the outfits. I already know y'all got outfits. I don't even have to see you. I mean, I love it. I love it. I love it. And this is what I imagine the whole process will feel like, even when it's a challenge. So, and I can't wait for you to meet some of these folks cutting up in the comments, because you will be meeting them, whether I have asked them or not. They already know. I basically have carte blanche to drag them in. So I'm really excited. Let me get serious for a minute. I am full just thinking about this work. I think about it all day, and I'm very excited about it. And everything is expanding in beautiful ways, and we have so much power to shape it. And I know you've wanted this. I know you've needed this. I've needed this. I've wanted this. I think really I was just waiting for me to trust that I was big enough to help do it. That was my own shit. But now that we're here, it's on, and the party just ain't gonna stop. So if you have any questions, the Blacker the Brain at Gmail, DM. We're also on the Blacker the Brain IG. You know where to find us. Yes, I do want a hula hoop. I do. I would like this. I would like that. Oh, is there a cap for the cohort? I think we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, boo. Won't that be nice though, to even have to have that conversation? I don't want to cap the cohort. I don't want to get. Why? I just don't want to. My initial instinct is like, we need an army. We are trying to shift culture. Now, does that mean, how will we figure out who's, we're not policing folks either, right? Like, so let me be clear. We ain't just handing out stickers. You know, I used to do safe zone training, and you would get a sticker because you went to the training. And I felt like that don't necessarily mean you're not homophobic anymore. So the Black Panther Parade doesn't mean you're automatically not carrying implicit bias, right? What it means is that you are actively a part of a community that is shifting culture through decolonizing mental health in all these ways. So if you're not actively doing that, then you don't get the logo. And even if you have the logo and maybe you drop off, then you're not in the directory. Like, the point is, like, you have to continue to be safe. So I think that's kind of its own way of regulating things. And that's not like me policing it. That's me being responsible for like who we're saying